Look at this. They're sending us librarians now. You think you have what it takes to wear this trident, little lady? Go back to your desk. The words, dripping with condescension, echoed across the windswept firing range at Coronado. The crowd of SEAL candidates, a sea of burly, sun-scorched men, rippled with nervous laughter. They were exhausted, pushed to the brink by weeks of brutal training, and the instructor's casual cruelty was a familiar part of their landscape. Master Chief Thorne, a man carved from granite and arrogance, stood with his hands on his hips, a smirk playing on his lips as he singled her out. He enjoyed these moments, these public dissections of perceived weakness. But the target of his scorn, Senior Chief Petty Officer Evelyn Reed, offered no reaction. She didn't flinch. Her gaze didn't waver from the distant targets shimmering in the heat haze. Her posture was a study in perfect stillness, a ramrod straight line of discipline against the chaos of the range. She stood there, unassuming in her standard-issue fatigues, her hair pulled back in a severe, functional bun. There was nothing about her that screamed elite warrior, and that was the entire basis of Thorne's ignorant assessment. But a few hundred yards away, observing from the shaded porch of the command tower, General Marcus Vance saw something else entirely. He didn't see a librarian. He saw the subtle, almost imperceptible shift in her stance as she compensated for the crosswind, a movement so practiced it was subconscious. He saw the economy of her breathing, the slow, rhythmic rise and fall of her chest, a master's control over the body's autonomic responses. He saw a weapon system, human and serene, waiting for its moment of activation. The general knew that true lethality wasn't loud. It was silent, patient, and utterly professional. If you believe that true strength is proven, not proclaimed, type proven in the comments below. The tension on the range was a palpable thing, thick and suffocating. Master Chief Thorne paced before the line of candidates, his voice a gravelly bark that cut through the wind. He was building his theater of humiliation, using Eve as the centerpiece. This isn't a book club, he spat, gesturing dismissively in her direction. Out here, you have one shot. The cold bore. The first round from a clean, cold barrel. It's the moment of truth. It tells us everything we need to know about who you are. There are no second chances in the field. You miss, your team pays the price. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle on the young men. He then turned his full, withering attention back to Eve. You probably think this is like those video games you play. Point and click. But this is real steel, real physics, real wind. It takes strength to hold this rifle steady. It takes grit. It takes something I'm not sure you have. The other candidates shifted uncomfortably. The initial amusement had curdled into a grim anticipation. They were witnessing a ritualistic culling, and no one dared to intervene. Eve, however, remained a statue of calm. She methodically checked her equipment. The worn leather of her sling, the clean optics of her scope, the polished feed ramp of her rifle. Her hands moved with an unhurried, deliberate grace that was almost hypnotic. Each action was precise, efficient, and devoid of any wasted motion. It was the physical language of someone who had spent thousands of hours in communion with her tools. Her silence was her answer. It was a refusal to engage in his world of empty words and loud assumptions. Her focus was absolute, a silent rebuke to his entire performance. She was not in his world. She was in hers, a world of ballistics, wind calls, and the singular, perfect execution of a fundamental skill. The challenge was laid. The target, a 10-inch steel plate at 1,000 yards. A speck of white against a brown hillside, made almost invisible by the shimmering mirage. One by one, the other candidates took their positions. The wind, gusting unpredictably from the ocean, played havoc with their shots. The sharp crack of a rifle would be followed by a tense silence. And then, more often than not, the disappointing puff of dust as a round impacted the dirt berm high, low, left, or right. The faint ping of a successful hit was a rare and celebrated sound. Frustration mounted. Thorne's commentary grew sharper with each miss, his voice laced with disgust. Finally, it was Eve's turn. All right, librarian. Show us what you've got. He sneered, making a grand gesture toward the firing mat. She moved forward without a word. She didn't drop to the ground. She flowed into her position, a seamless transition from standing to a prone firing stance that was the epitome of stability. She adjusted the bipod, seated the rifle but firmly into the pocket of her shoulder, and brought her eye to the scope. The world outside the optic disappeared. All that existed was the reticle, the target, and the river of air between them. Her fingers danced over the elevation and windage turrets with the delicate precision of a surgeon, her mind a supercomputer processing distance, humidity, temperature, and the subtle shifts in the wind. She read from the swaying grass half a mile away. The entire range seemed to hold its breath. The other candidates, the assistant instructors, even Thorne himself, were fixated on the silent, focused woman on the mat. Her preparation was a clinic in professional marksmanship. There was no hesitation, no second-guessing. Every adjustment was made with a quiet confidence that was more intimidating than any boast. She settled her breathing, slowing it until it was barely perceptible. In, out, in, out. She found the natural respiratory pause, that brief, still moment between exhale and inhale where the body is most stable. Her finger curled around the trigger, resting on it with the weight of a feather. The world narrowed to a single point of intention. The crosshairs were steady, a perfect, unmoving intersection on the center of the distant steel. She wasn't just aiming. She was becoming one with the rifle, an extension of its mechanical potential. And then, it happened. A single, clean break. The rifle bucked against her shoulder, its recoil absorbed perfectly by her frame. The crack of the shot was sharp, authoritative. It ripped through the silence, and for a moment, that was the only sound. Then came the wait. A second stretched into an eternity as the bullet traveled its long, invisible arc across the range. The air was thick with disbelief and anticipation. And then it came back to them, a clear, high-pitched ping, the unmistakable sound of a copper-jacketed lead projectile striking hardened steel. It was not just a hit. It was a dead-center strike, a perfect shot that echoed across the valley not as a sound, but as a statement. The silence that followed was absolute, a deafening void where Thorne's arrogance had once been. His jaw hung slightly open, his face a mask of stunned, uncomprehending shock. "No, no way," he whispered, the words barely audible. "That's not possible." From the command tower, General Vance descended the steps, his face impassive but his eyes sharp. He walked onto the range with a steady, unhurried gait that commanded immediate attention. The spell of shocked silence was broken as instructors and candidates alike snapped to a rigid posture of respect. Master Chief Thorne, his face now pale and slick with a cold sweat, turned and saluted stiffly. The general returned it with a curt nod, but his focus was elsewhere. He walked past Thorne without a second glance, his boots crunching softly on the gravel, and stopped directly behind Eve, who was already in the process of clearing her weapon, her movements as fluid and methodical as they had been before the shot. She was a professional finishing a task. "Senior Chief." The general's voice was calm, but carried an unmistakable weight of authority. "Report." Eve secured her rifle and rose to her feet in a single, smooth motion. "Senior Chief Petty Officer Evelyn Reed, sir," she said, her voice even and clear. It was the first time most of them had heard her speak more than 2 words. General Vance nodded, then held out his hand. "Your service record, Senior Chief." An aide, seemingly appearing from nowhere, handed the general a ruggedized data tablet. The general's thumb swiped across the screen, his eyes scanning the lines of text. The range remained utterly silent, the candidates watching a drama unfold that they couldn't yet comprehend. The mystery of the quiet woman was about to be solved, not by her, but for her. The general looked up from the tablet, his gaze sweeping over the assembled men before finally landing on the still-stunned Master Chief Thorne. "Let me read you a story, Master Chief," Vance began, his voice dangerously low. "A story about assumptions." He turned the screen slightly so the light caught it. Subject: Senior Chief Petty Officer Evelyn Reed. Current assignment: Naval Special Warfare Development Group. That's DevGru, for those of you who are slow on the uptake. Call sign: Spectre. A murmur went through the candidates. DevGru, the elite of the elite. Thorne's face went from pale to ashen. The general continued, his voice like chipping stone. Active deployments, 14. Areas of operation, classified. Combat engagements, classified. Marksmanship qualifications, Master Instructor, every small arms platform in the SOCOM inventory. She literally wrote the current training doctrine for long-range engagement in mountainous terrain. The very manual you are failing to teach, Master Chief, has her name on the first page. He paused, letting the information saturate the air. He then looked down at the standard-issue rifle in Eve's hands, then at the magnificent, custom-built M210 sniper rifle slung over his own shoulder, a weapon that was a legend in its own right, a personal gift from the manufacturer. In a gesture that sent a shockwave of awe through the onlookers, General Vance unslung his own weapon. He held it out, offering it to her. "Senior Chief," he said, his voice now filled with a profound respect. "I believe you've earned this more than I have." Eve simply looked at him and gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. "Thank you, General. But I'm fine with this one. It works." Her quiet competence was absolute. The General smiled, a rare and powerful sight. He turned back to Thorn, his expression hardening once more. "You mistook a master for an apprentice. You mistook quiet professionalism for weakness. You let your ego write a check your rank couldn't cash. Let this be a lesson to every single one of you. The most dangerous person on the battlefield is rarely the loudest. Assumptions are a cancer. They will get you, and your team, killed." Dismissed. The story of that day on the range spread through the naval special warfare community like wildfire. It was told and retold in the barracks at night, in the chow halls, and on secure forums online where operators traded stories. It became known simply as the librarian's shot. The tale was a perfect parable, a modern military fable with a clear and potent moral. It wasn't just about a woman outshooting a man. It was about the fundamental victory of demonstrated skill over baseless prejudice. It was a story about how true warriors are defined not by the noise they make, but by the precision of their actions. The legend grew with each telling. Some said she'd hit the target from a mile away, in a hurricane, blindfolded. The embellishments were fantastical, but the core truth of the event remained. A quiet professional had, with a single bullet, dismantled a culture of loud, toxic arrogance. The impact on the training command was immediate and profound. Master Chief Thorn was quietly reassigned, sent to a desk job where his assumptions could do no more harm. The story was that he submitted his retirement papers a week later, a man publicly humbled by his own ignorance. The lesson he learned was brutal but necessary, a stark reminder that the emblems on a uniform are not a license for disrespect, but a mark of responsibility. The culture at the range began to shift, slowly but surely. The instructors started looking for different qualities in the candidates, not just brute strength, but mental fortitude, focus, and the quiet humility to learn. Eve, for her part, deflected the newfound attention with the same quiet grace she had shown on the range. She became a living legend, a ghost that younger operators spoke of with reverence, but she never acknowledged her status. She simply continued her work. She was seen on other ranges, mentoring new snipers, her teaching style as minimalist and effective as her speech. She wouldn't lecture. She would demonstrate. She would guide a student's hand, adjust their posture with a quiet touch, and show them, through action, the path to perfection. Her philosophy was contagious. She taught that the rifle was an honest tool. It didn't care about your gender, your size, or your ego. It cared only for stability, breath control, and a perfect trigger squeeze. That was the only truth that mattered. In the main instructor hut at the Coronado Range, a small, unofficial monument appeared. Someone had recovered the spent .308 casing from her shot. They mounted it on a simple plaque of dark walnut. Below the gleaming brass, a small, engraved plate was affixed. It didn't bear her name or rank. It just said, in stark, simple letters, "Assume nothing." The firing point she had used that day, Lane 7, was given a new name by the trainees. They called it Spectre's Perch. To be assigned to shoot from that lane was considered both an honor and a heavy responsibility, a reminder of the standard that had been set there. The legend was now woven into the very fabric of the place. Months later, a new class of SEAL candidates lay on the mats of the same range, their faces etched with a mixture of determination and exhaustion. A new Master Chief, a man with a quieter demeanor and wiser eyes, walked the line. He paused behind a young, struggling candidate whose shots were going wide. Instead of yelling, the instructor knelt beside him. "You're fighting the rifle," he said calmly. "You're letting the pressure get to you. You're thinking too much about the outcome and not enough about the process. He then pointed toward the instructor hut, where the small plaque was visible through the window. You know why that casing is on the wall? He asked. The candidate shook his head. Because months ago, on this very spot, one of the most decorated snipers in the history of this community, someone who most of us will never be worthy of carrying gear for, was told they didn't belong here. They were judged by their appearance, not their ability. And they answered that ignorance with a single, perfect shot. They taught us all that competence is quiet. Ego is loud. Your job is not to be loud. Your job is to be competent. The story had become doctrine. It was no longer just gossip. It was a core teaching principle, a foundational lesson in the ethos of a true quiet professional. The legacy of Eve Reed's shot was not the hole in the steel target 1,000 yards away. It was the change it inspired in the people who heard the story. It was a permanent course correction, a reminder that an institution's greatest strength lies in its ability to recognize excellence in whatever form it appears. True legacy isn't a monument you build to yourself. It's the standard that continues forward long after you are gone, carried on by those you inspired. It's the lesson that echoes in the silence after the shot. The real measure of a warrior is found in the quiet moments of preparation, in the disciplined pursuit of perfection, and in the profound humility that comes from knowing that your skills will always speak louder than any words you could ever utter. The quietest person in the room is often the one who has survived the most, who has achieved the most, and who has the least to prove to anyone but themselves. They don't need validation from the crowd, because their validation comes from the simple, undeniable truth of a job well done. For more stories where quiet competence triumphs over loud ignorance, and where silent precision defines their worth, subscribe to Unknown Heroine Stories.